She wasn't late, she wasn't loud, she just wore the wrong blazer. And in a room full of polished egos and pending billions, one misplaced insult cracked the silence. And everything else. The room pulsed with the artificial chill of overcompensation. Too much glass, too much chrome, too little soul. Executive silence echoed off the walls of the 34th floor boardroom, where every surface gleamed and every smile was a weapon. Danica adjusted her notebook, already open, already annotated. The warmth of her skin didn't match the climate-controlled air or the frostbite glances thrown her way. She had double-checked the agenda, triple-checked the deck, pressed her charcoal blazer the night before. It was her first in-room with the C-suite since the merger talks began, and she was more than ready. Across the table, a hollow laugh punctured the tension. Amanda Vaughn, VP of Global Brand and daughter of the founder, leaned back in her ergonomic throne with the kind of ease only generational security allowed. "So," Amanda said, sipping her espresso like it was an Oscar performance, "do we all agree that the Scandinavian team's pitch lacked cultural depth?" Her eyes didn't meet anyone's, until they did. Danica's. A subtle microcliff, a test. Danica felt it, but answered with calm. The cultural tie-ins were secondary to the supply chain innovation. They're not mutually exclusive. It wasn't what Amanda expected. And that was the beginning. The temperature in the room shifted, not a degree, but a mood. 2 chairs down, someone whispered. Not loud, but enough. "Is she even on brand?" A snicker from the corner. Then Amanda smiled, wide and faux kind. "That's right. You're ops, aren't you? Cute little blazer, though." Danica blinked, just once, but the tension in her shoulders didn't blink at all. Across from her, Hugo Stein, the investor's lead counsel, stopped scrolling. Something in Amanda's tone had sliced through the pretense. Danica said nothing. But her silence wasn't defeat. It was patience, razor-thin and coiled. The conversation turned. Someone brought up ESG clauses. Someone else mentioned projected tax savings. But the mood was cracked, visibly, audibly, like a champagne glass tapped too hard. And it got worse. At 11:04 a.m., as the CFO connected the final data visualization to the projected return on equity, Amanda tilted her head again, eyes narrowed on Danica. "Wait, sorry to interrupt, but did you read the dress code?" The room froze. There was no laughter, not this time, just the kind of silence that makes oxygen taste metallic. Danica's breath stayed even. "I did," she said quietly. "It's business formal. This is Armani." Amanda's smile stiffened. Her voice didn't lower. "Then maybe check it again. We don't do shoulder seams in this room." A second later, Hugo closed his tablet. Then, the microsecond nobody expected, he said aloud, "We're pausing the conversation. I'll be reaching out to Oslo privately." Eyes snapped to him. The merger was days from closing. Oslo had flown in. So had legal. And Amanda had just pushed too far. Danica didn't gloat. She just closed her notebook, page marked, thoughts intact. Outside the glass, the city shimmered, still moving, unaware it had just witnessed a $3.8 billion heartbeat slip out the door. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't stand up, but someone else did. And it changed everything. Danica had known humiliation before, but never like this. Not with so many polished shoes in the room, not with so many silent approvals under a single smirk. Amanda Vaughn hadn't raised her voice for drama. She had weaponized it for precision, just loud enough to be undeniable, just cruel enough to be professional. And the irony? Danica had worn that blazer once in Berlin, once in Tokyo, and once at a government-backed trade conference in D.C., where everyone complimented her poise. But here, In a boardroom run on legacy and lineage, it had been turned into an insult. Because it wasn't about the fabric. It never was. It was about who was allowed to wear power. Danica sat still, spine straight while the whispers started. A chair leg scraped, a nervous cough. The CFO avoided eye contact. Amanda, unfazed, returned to her coffee. "Anyway," she said with a sharp exhale, "let's get back to the forecast. I have Pilates at 1. That was when the lawyer stood. Hugo Stein, with his salt and pepper temples and impeccable tie knot, had never raised his voice in 5 years of counsel. But this time, he didn't have to. "Respectfully," Hugo said, gathering his tablet and reaching for his coat, "I believe we need to reassess alignment before we proceed." Amanda blinked. "Excuse me?" "I'll be advising my client to reconsider the merger under current leadership tone." Nobody moved, because nobody understood what they had just heard. Except Danica, because she caught it, the phrase that would later appear in merger termination language. Leadership tone inconsistent with shared values. A microcliff rippled through the room. This wasn't a delay. This was the sound of a noose tightening on a $3.8 billion deal. Amanda's face drained of its color. "You're not serious." But Hugo had already left the room. Behind him, the silence was heavier than the granite table they'd all sat around. Danica finally looked up. Her eyes met Amanda's. But there was no venom, no gloat, just stillness. The kind of stillness that follows a tectonic shift. The kind of stillness that prefaces headlines. The headline hadn't printed yet. But in that silence, Danica could already hear the presses warming up. Ever felt invisible in a room full of suits? You're not alone. Hit subscribe. Justice wears quiet shoes. Danica didn't go home that night. She walked, through streets still pulsing with the aftershock of finance and failure. She let the noise of the city erase Amanda's voice, syllable by syllable. The neon reflected off her blazer like irony, that same inappropriate shoulder seam now brushing past billion-dollar storefronts without judgment. Inside her pocket, her phone buzzed with aftermath. "Hey, what happened? Did you know Hugo was going to do that? Are we still going forward?" Amanda's in her office, doors closed. She didn't answer, because Danica understood what most didn't. This wasn't about one comment. This was about a tension that had been simmering for months, between departments, between generations, between earned power and inherited position. And Amanda Vaughn, the so-called crown princess of brand alignment, had just detonated that tension with a 4-word missile. "Did you read the dress code?" Danica walked past the familiar building lobby again, the one she wasn't planning to enter. But as the revolving doors turned, she caught her reflection. A calm face, eyes alert, not tired, just awake. She turned and kept walking, not home, not yet, because someone had just sent her an NDA draft. It wasn't from Amanda, it wasn't from HR, it was from the External Audit Committee. With a note, "We need a timeline of cultural interference incidents, starting 3 months back. Internal affairs will follow up, confidential." That was the moment it hit her. This wasn't a moment, this was a pattern, and someone was ready to document it. Back at the office, Amanda's silence wasn't grace. It was containment. VP's daughter or not, she had become a liability. Danica opened her laptop at a co-working cafe downtown. No logo, no brand walls, just Wi-Fi and clarity. She began typing. October 14th, Amanda dismissed the ESG team's gender audit as unnecessary political fluff. November 3rd, she redirected budget away from neurodiverse hiring initiative, called it a waste. December 1st, laughed during DEI presentation, said, "We're diverse enough. We have interns." Each line bled from memory to truth. Each entry a match to a trail of dry kindling. And Danica? She didn't need revenge. She had evidence. And now, she had an audience. It started quietly. An email Danica didn't expect. Subject: clarification request, investor hug transcript, November 8th. Sender: internal affairs, confidential channel. She stared at it, not because of fear, but because she remembered that meeting too well. The awkward embrace between Amanda and lead investor Tarek Moaz hadn't been in the minutes, but the tension afterward had been unforgettable. Amanda had leaned in too fast, too performative. Tarek had frozen. And Danica? Danica had watched the muscles in his jaw tighten as he subtly sidestepped. And now, someone wanted the details. Someone high enough to request transcripts. Someone with access to recorded Zoom logs the rest of them had quietly forgotten. Danica replied carefully, "That interaction was not part of official documentation, but several team members commented on its discomfort." 2 hours later, she received a password-protected folder. Culture Logs/VP Interactions. Inside were clips, quotes, silence breakdowns. Moments Danica didn't know were observed. Amanda laughing during a compliance training. Amanda skipping a scheduled one-on-one with Oslo's sustainability officer. Amanda eye-rolling on a recorded Zoom while the Tunis finance rep spoke in accented English. This wasn't rumor. This was recorded disrespect. Danica felt something uncoil in her chest, not satisfaction. Not yet, but validation. That afternoon, 2 names were removed from the merger transition team. Amanda's wasn't one of them, yet, but the Slack messages started. "Anyone else get a ping from governance? What's code 22 mean in the HR tracker? Amanda's calendar's locked. Who does that?" Danica didn't reply. She didn't need to anymore, because the quietest people were now the loudest archivists, and Amanda's legacy, the one she had never earned, was unraveling line by line. That evening, Danica updated her notes. She titled the folder, "Executive Blunder, Pattern Recognition." She paused, then added one more entry. January 12th. Did you read the dress code? Verbal remark, public setting, tone recorded, impact immediate. Timestamp 11:04 a.m. And then she backed it all up, twice. The next morning arrived dressed in thunder, not weather, but tone. Emails came in with subject lines that blinked like warnings. Urgent, dress code policy, clarification, reputational risk flagged internal, meeting request, Danica Reyes/General Counsel/HR. At 9:17 a.m., Danica entered conference room B. No mahogany, no skyline. Just a screen, 3 chairs, and a pitcher of untouched water. On the screen, Marla Jenkins, lead counsel. Across the table, HR Director Evan Liu, sleeves rolled. "Danica," Marla said calmly, "we want to make something clear up front. You're not in trouble." Danica nodded. She didn't flinch, not anymore. Evan folded his hands. "We've been reviewing the handling of several interpersonal incidents. Yesterday's escalation accelerated that." Danica raised an eyebrow. "The blazer?" Marla almost smiled. "The tone, the visibility, the context." She clicked a slide, and there, in Arial font and damning simplicity, were the words, "Policy breach, undermining publicly in strategic meetings, VP Vaughn, 3 incidents documented." A beat of silence, then Evan added, "The investor has submitted an official concern, citing culture misalignment. That hug Amanda forced on Mr. Moaz, it's now in the write-up." Danica let the weight of it settle. This wasn't about a hug or a hemline. This was a narrative collapsing on itself. And then came the moment that shifted everything. Marla leaned forward. "We'd like your help," quietly, "to complete a pattern of behaviors." Danica's voice was steady. "You want a witness." "No," Evan said. "We want truth." "And you've been in the room for too many of the wrong moments." Outside, the office bustled with performance, smiles rehearsed, handshakes hollow. But inside this room, something rare bloomed: credibility. Danica pulled out her notebook, the same one Amanda had mocked. She opened to the flagged page. "Where do you want to start?" Marla's smile was small. "At the beginning." Danica began with October. She didn't embellish, she didn't dramatize, she documented. Each statement was deliberate, each pause surgical. October 12th, Amanda refers to Oslo's green compliance partner as tree-hugging Eurotrash, overheard by 3 staffers in an open-plan breakout room. November 2nd, during internal prep for the investor call, Amanda dismissed a neurodiverse candidate's CV as too complicated to mentor. November 17th, at the client dinner, she toasted to pure bloodlines and brand heritage, prompting visible discomfort from the Japanese delegation. And then, December 5th, the moment Amanda berated a junior staffer in the elevator for wearing a patterned shirt. The staffer had quietly transferred departments the next week. Danica didn't need to dramatize, because the pattern spoke for itself. Evan Liu listened silently typing. Marla's face remained unreadable. But when Danica reached January 8th, the final investor prep before the incident, Marla interrupted. "Wait, that's when she dismissed the audit summary, right?" Danica nodded. She said, quote, "Let's stop pretending the interns matter." The silence afterward wasn't awkward, it was absorbing. And then came the click. Marla uploaded Danica's account directly into the internal executive blunder report. "You've given us what we needed," Marla said. Her tone wasn't praise. It was confirmation. Danica closed the notebook. Her fingers brushed over the soft leather cover. This time, no one sneered at it. Evan stood. "You may start getting questions, from legal, possibly comms. You're protected." Danica didn't ask what that meant. She already knew. Protection wasn't silence anymore. It was visibility. As she left the room, her phone buzzed. A text from someone unexpected. Tarek Moaz. "I heard you kept notes. I'd like to talk, quietly." She didn't reply. Yet. But something told her. This wasn't the end. It was the real beginning. The office felt different now, not quieter, just watchful, as if the walls had begun listening back. Danica walked past Amanda's glass-walled corner office. The blinds, once permanently open for status optics, were now drawn shut. The light inside flickered. Someone was pacing. 2 assistants whispered near the printer. One stopped mid-sentence when Danica passed, not out of malice, but recognition. They knew, or at least they suspected. By noon, 3 more emails arrived. Dress code policy, HR alignment request, update required, inclusion statement review, internal comms draft, brand and ethics realignment. Each one had Amanda's name in BCC. Each one echoed something she'd once mocked. Danica exhaled slowly. This wasn't just about her anymore. It was institutional correction in motion. At 1 p.m., she was called into a brand synergy alignment check-in, a euphemism for fallout analysis. To her surprise, Amanda was there, not in heels, not in dominance, just present, pale, silent, the kind of silence that comes when someone is no longer writing the story, just reading it in real time. Across from her sat Marla, calm, composed, with a single sheet of paper. "Today we're reviewing next steps," she said. Her voice was that of a physician describing post-op recovery. Precise, clinical, final. Amanda didn't interrupt, didn't deflect. She just nodded, and then, unexpectedly, "I'd like to apologize," Amanda said, voice thin, "for the tone I've used, for how that affected others." Danica kept her expression neutral, because apologies under pressure aren't always repentance. Sometimes they're survival tactics. Marla didn't respond to the apology. Instead, she turned to Danica. "Your role is expanding. You'll be representing ops in culture task force reviews, starting next week." A heartbeat, then two. Danica blinked, not in disbelief, but in calibration. This wasn't a promotion. It was a shift in gravity. Amanda's eyes dropped. For the first time, they didn't rise again. Danica stood, nodded, and left the room. Behind her, the blinds remained closed. But outside, the rest of the building was finally opening its eyes. By Thursday, her inbox had transformed, not just with tasks, but with access. Rooms she was never CC'd in, threads where her name was now bolded, invites labeled Strategic Vision and Cross-Functional Ethics Council. Danica sat at her usual desk. Same chair, same mug, same view of the overwatered snake plant near the copier. But nothing was the same. She had become visible. And visibility in a system like this? That was power wrapped in silence. But with visibility came scrutiny. That morning, a new Slack channel appeared. #RealCultureTalk anonymous avatars. No brand tags, just whispers in pixels. Someone finally stood up. Danica deserves the seat. Amanda's been coasting for years. Remember when she mocked the Ghana intern's accent? Danica read it all, silently, and then closed the tab. Because she knew, movements that survive don't rely on gossip. They rely on documentation. At 2:47 p.m., she received a secure Zoom link. Subject, Tarek Moaz /private debrief. When she clicked in, his face filled the screen, composed, crisp, and kind. "I owe you thanks," he said without preamble. "You showed restraint and record." Danica met his eyes. "I just told the truth." He smiled faintly. "That's rare enough to matter." Then, without ceremony, he forwarded a document titled Investor Realignment Memo, Leadership Structure Recommendations. And there, 3 pages in, under Succession Advisory, it read, "Recommend elevation of Danica Reyes to Joint Ops/Brand Liaison role during transition oversight. Her perspective has proven aligned with long-term investor values." She didn't speak, couldn't for a second. But Tarek added one final line. "Legacy favors memory, but markets favor momentum." Then he logged off. Danica sat in the quiet hum of her open tab. The snake plant near the copier waved gently under the vent. The coffee machine hissed its tired rhythm. And across the office, Amanda's door remained closed. But now, no one was afraid to knock. Friday arrived like a verdict, not dramatic, not loud, just undeniable. A company-wide email slid into inboxes at 9 a.m. sharp. No gifts, no corporate sparkle, just black text on white. Subject, Leadership Transition Announcement. Effective immediately, Amanda Vaughn will be stepping back from her role as VP of Brand Strategy. We thank her for her service and wish her clarity in her next chapter. No signature, no quote from the CEO, just the kind of statement that says nothing and means everything. Around her, monitors refreshed in unison. The quiet was deafening. But this time it wasn't fear. It was relief. Danica didn't celebrate. She didn't smirk. She just opened her laptop, added a line to her timeline file, and sent the final packet to compliance. Last incident logged January 12th. Public behavioral breach. Policy impact confirmed? A few minutes later, her Slack pinged. Need your input on dress code policy draft. Legal wants your eye. The irony wasn't lost on her. At 11:03 a.m., she stood in front of the full task force team, HR, comms, and legal, and walked through the first version of the rewritten standard. No more vague references. No more unwritten rules about seams, fabric, or tone, just language that prioritized dignity, clarity, equity. At the end of the meeting, legal nodded. We'll pilot it with APAC next quarter. You'll co-lead. Danica simply said, Good, because what else was there to say? The work had begun. As she packed her laptop, a junior associate approached, shoulders tense, hesitation thick in her throat. Hey, just wanted to say thanks for not letting it slide. Danica smiled. Thanks for noticing, then added with quiet conviction. Next time, no one should have to stand alone. The associate nodded. Noted. That evening, as lights dimmed in the building, Amanda's nameplate was quietly removed, and Danica? She walked out into the city, the same blazer on her shoulders, unbothered, unbowed, unapologetically hers. Weeks passed, not in silence, but in motion. The office recalibrated like a pendulum finally let go. Meetings started on time. Interruptions faded. The undercurrent of tension, that familiar, sharp awareness of hierarchy, had softened. People began speaking, out loud. And when they did, they looked at Danica. She'd never been appointed head of anything public. There was no dramatic announcement, no balloon drop. But she was now the one folks looped in early, the one they waited for before starting, the one whose yes carried structural weight. The dress code policy she helped rewrite rolled out globally, with her name in the footer as co-architect, and every time she saw it cited, every time someone in Manila or Prague asked, Can we clarify what's meant by fabric discrimination? She smiled, because that term hadn't existed before her. Now it did. The legacy Amanda had tried to sculpt in brand marble had been quietly replaced by something harder to chisel away. Respect built on proof. One afternoon, she received a brown envelope with no return address. Inside, a note on thick cream stock. It took me too long to realize silence isn't elegance. Thank you for not matching mine. A V. No apology, no emotion, just a full stop. Danica filed it under no action required, because some chapters close without ceremony, and some women don't need revenge, just enough sunlight to grow past the shadows. That night, she passed the lobby mirror again. Same blazer, same eyes, but now, no one would dare ask if she'd read the dress code. She hadn't just read it, she had rewritten it. Months later, the boardroom felt like a different country. Gone were the performative nods and weaponized silences. Gone were the rules whispered but never written, enforced by lineage rather than logic. The glass still gleamed, the suits still cost more than rent. But something fundamental had changed. The culture had shifted. Danica now sat at the long table regularly, not as a guest, not as a tolerated operator, but as a decision-maker. And today, she wasn't alone. A new face took a seat across from her. Amina Khalid, director of Global DEI, flown in from London, first day, first board, first test. Danica watched as eyes glanced at Amina's headscarf, her Oxford sneakers, her confident voice. She saw the flickers, the old reflexes, and then she did something Amanda Vaughn never would have. She interrupted the meeting. I'd like to pause here, Danica said calmly. Heads turned, eyebrows raised. She continued. Before we move forward, I think Amina should be the one to introduce the alignment proposal. It originated with her team. A beat, Then Amina smiled. Thank you. And just like that, power shifted, again. Not because of loudness, not because of retaliation, but because someone with memory and integrity made space. Later that evening, Danica sat at her desk reviewing a policy draft from Brazil when a new intern popped her head in, nervous. Sorry, quick question. Can we wear boots during off-site weeks? Danica didn't flinch. She smiled and said, without irony, without venom, without pause, wear what lets you lead. The intern grinned. Thanks, Ms. Reyes. As the girl walked away, Danica returned to her screen. Another city, another rollout, another ripple. Her blazer hung on the back of her chair, quiet, simple, strong, like a banner no one dared question anymore. Because the dress code? She'd rewritten more than that. She had rewritten what power looks like,